Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
All right, welcome back to podcast 12 of 2019. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can tweet me at the Public Dog, and you can tweet us at the Odds Breakers. We have a fantastic show for you today, my friends. Brian Edwards is back, professional handicapper, to break down some games this weekend and a little bit about the SEC. He's got a ton of knowledge on the SEC. Before that, I'm going to go into a few trends, a little bit about the Big Ten, and a couple things about bubble teams. So this episode is being sponsored by mybookie.ag for a 50% bonus. Please visit MyBookie and use the promo code TheOddsBreakers. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out, sponsor our show, we would love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a member for $12.99 a month. You will also get our picks when we make the plays, premium plays, before the line moves. For $2 more, become a patron subscriber. And you get the podcast a little bit early. For if nothing else, visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. Speaking of our free picks newsletter, we are looking for more handicappers to freelance right for us. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com or just contact us on Twitter at theoddsbreakers. Love to have you for some MLB we're looking for, a little bit more NBA and NHL or soccer or whatever else you'd like to do. We're growing, and we would love to help you get your name out there. All right. Well, really quickly, this time of year, when you're betting on games, one of the things that you have to look out for is motivation, right? I mean, if you look at what Penn State's been doing, if you look at what Ohio State's been doing, you know, these teams are motivated because they are on the bubble, okay? Might not be the best idea to fade a bubble team unless you know something or they're in some terrible spot here. So these teams are motivated. They're trying to get into the NCAA tournament. At the same time, there are some teams out there that will completely quit. You know, maybe not so much at home, but when they're on the road, they have nothing else to play for, and they are preparing themselves for tournament time, for conference tournament time. So you might want to look at fading those kind of teams and laying some larger chalk on the other side. So this time of year is huge for that kind of thing. And I think that's how we benefited so much last year on our awesome March Madness streak. It really started at the end of February of last year. All right. Let's get into a little bit of the Big Ten power ratings, shall we? So Michigan State is clearly number one now that they beat Michigan at Michigan. They deserve it. Even with Nick Ward out, they seem to have not lost a step. They have a lot of big guys there, and Cassius Winston is just a baller, man. That guy's a finisher. They cover at the end, and nothing seems to stop this team. Second is Purdue. Matt Painter, possibly the Big Ten coach of the year. He's doing an awesome job. Of course, Carson Edwards, possibly the best player in the Big Ten. You have Michigan next, and had a little hiccup against Michigan State, of course, but this is still a very dangerous team. Wisconsin is fourth with a very close Maryland right there at fifth. I think, you know, Maryland away games are not that good, but they're certainly good at home. Iowa is sixth, holding strong. Ohio State moves back up to seventh after what they've been doing, chasing that bubble. Minnesota's dropped down a little bit to eighth. Penn State is ninth. Actually, I think Ohio State, Minnesota, and Penn State are all equally as dangerous. Nebraska is 10th. Indiana is 11th, and I was tempted to move them higher than Nebraska just because of the way they've been playing lately. They did beat Wisconsin in overtime at home. They almost beat Purdue. You know, pushed Iowa into overtime. So Indiana's making a little bubble run themselves. They think they're on the bubble, but they're not. But they're pretty close. Illinois dropping down to 12th. They haven't been winning, and they are just not a good team to bet on when they're favored. Rutgers is 13th, and Northwestern is still dead last at 14th in the Big Ten. Before we have our guest, Mr. Brian Edwards, I'd like to go into a couple trends. And actually, one of these is from Brian. Cincinnati away games in NCAA basketball have been money on the under. It hit again last night. The unders are 42, 12, and 1 of their last 55 games. 42, 12, and 1. That's great information. Apparently, Cincinnati plays way better on the road the last 3 years. So, way better defense, that is. And doesn't score quite as much. But, that's a money trend right now, and it's probably good. Well, at least to the end of this season. So look at that. If Cincinnati, possibly neutral courts as well, you might want to look at the under. They only have one true away game left at Central Florida, so there you go. You can possibly hit that. Another key trend is something I got into just recently. A couple games I hit it. I wish I got into it a lot earlier, but in the NHL, the Chicago Blackhawks are 20-1 on the over the last 21 games. 20-1. All right? That's absolutely ridiculous. So you have to blind bet that over until it loses. Vegas has been juicing it a little bit, but I don't think it has adjusted enough because their goalie is not good over there. And Patrick Kane has been absolutely killing it. So I think, they're fighting to get in the playoffs. They've missed it the last few years. I think this trend, even if I lose, I'll probably still be hitting it. So I think that even if Corey Crawford comes back, which he's supposed to come back from his concussion soon, I think that I'm going to stick to these overs. All right. Well, before Brian comes on again, I want to hit one game for Friday. Not a big card at all, but you have Rhode Island versus Dayton. I might have found a little value on this one. Okay. Atlantic 10. I think Dayton's going to be favored about 10 points. Over-under is going to be about 136. So here's a game where both teams are going in different directions here. Dayton is working on a top 2 seed in their conference tournament, competing with VCU and Davidson. Probably Davidson. VCU's got a lead on them, while Rhode Island really has nothing to play for here. Rhode Island has had only 2 road games this month, and it was against VCU and Davidson, but they only averaged 47 points. As a matter of fact, all year in a bad conference and bad non-conference schedule, they only average 66 points per game on the road. So, shows you that they don't really play well on the road at all. Now, they have to play a team in Dayton that has the top offense in their conference on KenPom and the 3rd best defense. Now, Rhode Island just ended a bad streak of 5 losses, right? They beat up on one of the worst teams in their conference, George Washington. They shot an unreal 54% when they average more like 40%. So after getting that W, it's perfect time to fade them now. I think that they're going to regress back to the mean big time in a game that really doesn't matter. Dayton plays the 13th slowest pace in their conference. That's why I'm not quite as afraid that Dayton's the best scoring team in their conference, best offense, but they play at the 13th slowest pace. Kind of like a Michigan, right? If you're moving up in class, of course, to the Big Ten, but that's what they're kind of like. They play at 64.7 possessions per game in conference, and Rhode Island's no speedster either. They play 66.3 possessions. The average is about 68.5, right? Throughout college basketball. So Rhode Island is the worst 3-point shooting team in the nation. They rank 353rd out of 353 teams. The worst, shooting about 25% for 3. So I just don't see how they're going to score here against Dayton. Dayton's not going to have to do that much to beat this team. And I also love the under. I think the under is probably the best side on this, in case for some reason Rhode Island tries to get up. But I'm going to take the under 136 large, and I'm going to take Dayton minus 10, a little bit smaller here. One little trend to go by as well. The under in Rhode Island games since February 2nd is 6-1. So there you go. Lots of reason to be looking at that 136 under. All right, and without further ado, let's bring on Mr. Brian Edwards. Now I'd like to welcome back a very accomplished handicapper and sports writer with tons of SEC knowledge. You can find his work at VegasInsider.com as well as BrianEdwardsSports.com. I'd like to welcome back Mr. Brian Edwards to the Odds Breakers. You can tweet him at VegasBEdwards. How's it going, Brian?
Going good, Kiev. What's going on, brother? Thanks for having me.
Right in the middle of the college basketball season, actually kind of going towards the end. March Madness is just, well, March is tomorrow, isn't it? So real excited, man. My favorite time of year is the NCAA tournament. It's just so fun. So many bets, little parlay action. So I'm stoked, man. You just kind of get re-energized, when this time of the year happens, doesn't it?
No doubt about it. Can't wait to get into conference tournaments starting on Tuesday or Wednesday, not this coming week, the week after. And it's just bets and ball game, noon to midnight and beyond. I love it.
That's right, my man. And I know you got some great takes on the conference tournaments. Hopefully some of you listeners can check them out at BrianEdwardsSports.com. And, of course, we have a little UFC event coming up this weekend, don't we? UFC 235. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, too. I think you might have a few plays, right?
Absolutely. You let me know when you're ready for them.
All right, my man. Well, let's get right into a little bit about the SEC. Being that you're the biggest Gator fan I know, you know all about this conference, my man. It's at the top. I think I know who is the best, but I want to see how you rank these teams.
Well, you gotta go. Well, I was about to say you gotta go Kentucky, but I mean I'm a big fan of LSU as well, and very impressive that they go without their stud Tremont Waters, and yet are still able to find to beat Tennessee this past Saturday. As Javonte Smart came up big with 29 points, and they bounced back from that loss to the Gators. I think they had kind of overlooked Florida, and UF just played its best game of the year in Baton Rouge, and so we have a rematch of that on Saturday. And I'm sorry, that one is not Saturday. Florida's got Georgia before that, but and LSU's at Alabama. But man, Kentucky and LSU are right there. Obviously, LSU got the win at Kentucky. A little bit of controversy. Yeah, look, I think people are starting to sleep on Tennessee. I think nationally they lost a little respect when they got it put on them at Rupp Arena a couple Saturdays ago. But I know Duke absolutely smashed Kentucky earlier this year, but that was like 4 months ago. I don't think anybody would have won at Rupp Arena that night. And, I give them a pass for losing at LSU and at Kentucky. I mean, I don't downgrade them for that. And then they found a way to win at a pretty good Ole Miss team last night, although I don't know what the hell Admiral Schofield is doing, taking a charge there and putting the referee on the spot. And although the ref got it right and it was a charge,
it was close.
Just get the hell out of the way. Yeah, what the hell is he doing, man? In real time, I thought it was a block.
Most of those times, they call that a block at the end of the game. I mean, at the end of the game, 9 out of 10 times they call it a block. They just happened to call it a charge, and that coach was furious. He threw his. And so, that was a close game, but maybe LSU is looking forward to this big matchup here with Kentucky, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. So it sounds like you have Kentucky, LSU, then Tennessee for your top three, right?
Yeah, and then, we've got a four-way tie for, I guess that would be fourth place with Mississippi State, Florida. Now, South Carolina, had a good SEC record, but their non-conference, they were below 500. It was a pretty, tough non-conference. And then you got, Ole Miss, Florida, South Carolina, and Mississippi State are tied. But I think Mississippi State is probably the better team there. Then I'd go Florida. Auburn is only 8-7, and I faded them last night. I had Georgia and got the cover. Georgia's actually, although they've lost 9 in a row now, they've covered 4 in a row. And Tom Crean's still got those guys playing hard, and they're still putting a lot of fannies in the seats as well. They're obviously energized by getting the number one prospect for next year. But yeah, I would put Auburn ahead of South Carolina actually